going to have a paper copy of this sheet. It says figurative language at the top. At the top, it kind of has a definition and overview of what figurative language is, and then it has this chart. So on the left-hand side, you'll have the name of the figurative language, and there's a lot of them. And then you'll have the definition, which I'll give you on the PowerPoint. I want you to write down the example from the PowerPoint presentation, and then you're going to come up with an original example. So as I'm going through the PowerPoint, it'll be your job to complete this chart. If you need to pause the video to fill something out or pause it so you can write down a definition, feel free to do so. The point of this video is so you can kind of go through it at your own pace and rewatch it if you need to. So make sure you have this sheet beside you on your desk. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint and we can start going through it. Alright, so figurative language is the opposite of literal language. Literal language is saying exactly what you mean, whereas figurative language is language that means more than what it says on the surface. It usually gives us a feeling about its subject. It's a tool the writer uses, and it helps the reader to visualize or see what the writer is thinking. Oftentimes, figurative language puts a picture in the reader's mind. What is figurative language? Whenever you describe something by comparing it with something else, you are using figurative language. So we have a lot of different types of figurative language. These are all on your chart, and we'll go through them one by one, get the definitions, and get some examples. So simile. Similes are a direct comparison between two unlike things, or a way of describing something by comparing it to something else, usually using the words like or as. So to show you what I want you to do on your chart, I'm going to do this first one with you. So I'm going to pull up my chart. Okay, so I'm going to write the definition. When you're writing down the definitions for the different types of figurative language, don't feel like you have to include every single word in there. This is mostly for you to remember what it is, okay? So for definition, I'm going to write a comparison between two unlike things, and then I'm going to do usually using the words like or as. So you can see I didn't write the whole definition word for word. I just wrote what I needed to help me remember what a simile was. Now I'm going to move on to the examples. So in our PowerPoint, we have 4 different examples. I am hungry as a horse. You run like a rabbit. She's happy as a clam. He is sneaky as a snake. So on your chart, you would go back and you would write one of these examples. I'll just write the first one. So you can see it's a comparison between two things, how hungry you are and a horse, and it used the word as to compare them. So that's how I know it's a simile. The last thing you need to do is create your own original example. So this isn't entirely original because I know that I've heard it before, but I'm going to put it down. I am as busy as a beaver. So I'm still comparing two things, how busy I am with a beaver, and then I used the word as, so that's how I know it's a simile. Once you've done all those things, you're ready to move on to the next type of figurative language. So I'll do that on the PowerPoint. That just lets you know what I want you to do as you fill out the chart. So let me go ahead and move on. Okay, a metaphor. A metaphor is very similar to a simile because it's comparing two unlike things, but it does not use like or as. So for example, the road was a ribbon wrapped through the desert, or the clown was a feather floating away. It's comparing the clown to a feather, but it's not saying the clown was like a feather. It's saying the clown was a feather floating away. Also, this is a really creepy clown. Okay, personification. Personification means to give human characteristics to something that is not human, such as animals, objects, or ideas. A couple examples. So we have the flowers danced in the wind. Flowers can't actually dance, of course, so dance, we're giving them human actions or characteristics. Another example, the friendly gates welcomed us. They can't actually welcome you, they can't actually be friendly, but we're saying the gates in whatever piece of literature, they appeared to be friendly, they appeared to be welcoming us. The hurricane's winds are yelling while blowing outside my window. All right, next up we have alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of the first consonant sound at the beginning of words. Sometimes we think it's the repetition of the same letter, and sometimes it can be, but it's more focusing on the first sound. So don't worry if not all the words start with the same letter. It still could be alliteration. An example, of course, the tongue twister, Peter Piper picked a pickled pepper. Or, we lurk late, we shoot straight. Here's a couple more. Stan the strong surfer saved several swimmers on Saturday. Or Tiny Tommy Thompson takes toy trucks to Timmy's on Tuesdays. Next up we have assonance. Assonance is the repetition of internal vowel sounds. It doesn't have to rhyme. This is one of the trickier ones, I think, to recognize, so don't worry if you haven't heard of it before or if you have trouble recognizing it in literature. Hopefully we'll get to go through some examples together. But here are some examples from the PowerPoint. We have Princess Kitty will kiss Timmy T. Tipper's lips. You have the repetition of that sound over and over again. Or here's another example. The pain may drain Drake, but maybe the weight is fake. So you have the repetition of that A sound. Pain, may, drain. These words don't necessarily rhyme, but the vowel sound is the same for all of them. Assonance is very similar to consonance, but whereas assonance was the repetition of the vowel sound, consonance is the repetition of the consonant sound when they repeat in the middle or end of words. So, for example, mammals named Sam are clammy. You get the repetition of that And down here, you get curse, bless me now, with fierce tears I pray. You get the repetition of that S sound. The next one is repetition, repeating a word or words for effect. So an example is from this poem. Nobody, no nobody, can make it out here alone. Alone, all alone, nobody but nobody can make it out here alone. This also makes me think of that poem we read by Maya Angelou, and she says, she keeps saying, life doesn't frighten me at all. And we talked about how she kept repeating it, and maybe one of the meanings was she kept repeating it because she was afraid of life. But if she kept saying it to herself over and over again, maybe she could convince herself that she wasn't afraid. So these are the kinds of effects we're looking for when we repeat a word or a phrase. Onomatopoeia are words that are also sounds. For example, we have buzz, hiss, beep, fizz, clink, vroom, woof, boom, zip. You see a lot of these in comic books. A couple more examples. The firecracker made a loud kaboom. The ball went swish as it hit the net. I knew the car was going to break down because it went chug, chug, chug. Hyperbole. You all are very good at identifying this one. An exaggerated statement used to heighten effect. It is not used to mislead the reader, but to emphasize a point. So hyperbole, sometimes we think of stretching the truth. It's not usually to lie, it's just to emphasize something. An example could be, she said so on several million occasions. Imagery is language that appeals to the senses. It's descriptions of people or objects stated in terms of our senses, which are, of course, sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. Idioms. An idiom or an idiomatic expression refers to a construction of words or expression different from the ordinary meaning of words. The context can help you understand what an idiom means. So, for example, she has a bee in her bonnet means she's obsessed. And it doesn't literally mean she has a bee in her bonnet. You can see how this would be confusing if you were learning another language. A couple more idioms. On top of the world, you're feeling really built up. You're feeling very confident. You're not literally on top of the world. It's raining cats and dogs is another one we hear all the time. If you look out the window, you're not going to see actual dogs and cats falling from the sky. It just means it's raining a lot. Allusion is a reference to a person, event, or place in history, or in another well-known work of literature. The writer assumes that the reader will recognize the reference. So they're not obscure pieces of literature or books that nobody's ever heard of. They're usually common things like fairy tales, historical figures that pretty much everybody has heard of or can relate to. So for example, if a writer says someone's being reliable as George Washington or as reliable as Benedict Arnold, many of us who've taken American history know that George Washington was reliable and Benedict Arnold was not. So if the author is saying, this character is about as reliable as Benedict Arnold, you know that you can't really trust that character because Benedict Arnold was a traitor. Irony. You all are very good at irony because you all love sarcasm. So it's when a speaker intends something entirely different than what is said. So maybe it's said in one way, but secretly it means the opposite. For example, if somebody accomplishes something hard or is very successful, you might say sarcastically, well, you've certainly made a mess of things. Or, we all had this example the other day when somebody left milk in the desk. You could walk in and say, it smells really good in here, when referring to that terrible smell that was coming out of that desk. So rhythm is when words are arranged in such a way that they make a pattern or beat. It's usually easier if you read it out loud to see the rhythm in something. So, there once was a man from Peru who dreamed of eating his shoe. He awoke with a fright in the middle of the night and found that his dream had come true. You can see how it kind of has a sing-songy sort of rhythm about it. You can go da-da-da-da-da. That's what I'm talking about when I say rhythm. It sounds like it should be a nursery rhyme or a poem or a song. Rhyme, you all should be very familiar with. It's when words have the same end sound, of course. It could happen at the beginning, end, or middle of lines. Easy example, wear, fair, air, bear, glare. Of course, it doesn't have to be spelled the same way at the end in order for it to rhyme. As long as it has that same sound at the end, it's considered a rhyme. There's a couple examples in here. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because you are very familiar with rhyme, but if you want to pause it and read through it, go ahead and do that.